And now, insurance-minded speeches from Geico.
It's a common expression, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. However, what if the horse's mouth is filled with useful insurance tools? This is the exact case with the Geico app. Yes, the app is free and therefore a gift horse. However, look inside the app and behold, emergency roadside assistance, digital ID cards, bill pay. Get the Geico app. Look it in the mouth. Get amazing services. Thank you.
This is Special Prosecutor Larry Clayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Clayman. You know, we've heard about Robert Mueller. He's the special counsel today. He used to be the independent counsel. But you're listening to the real special prosecutor because now for over 20 years, I've been in the courts and elsewhere trying to be the People's Justice Department. And that's exactly what we are at Freedom Watch. You can go to freedomwatchusa.org, see what we do, join, contribute to our cause. But let's talk about the news this week, because as we said, we just don't regurgitate the news. We're making the news. And, of course, a client of mine, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, America's sheriff, I represented him in the challenge to Obama's executive action on immigration, where he gave amnesty, in effect, to over 5 million illegal aliens. We prevailed in those cases. It was first filed in the District of Columbia. We got a Obama-appointed judge by the name of Burl Howell. She said it was political. She threw it out. We then went to Texas, where 25 states had actually copied our complaint, for the most part, filed a lawsuit. We intervened there, and we in the 25 states ultimately prevailed, not just at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. That's the appeals court for the Southern District of Texas, where the case was brought before Judge Hainan, but we also prevailed at the Supreme Court. Now, Arpaio is a hero. Arpaio is somebody, and I've known him a long time. He's not just a client. He's a very good friend. He's someone who's extremely sincere. You know, people say that he's a racist against Latinos and Latinas. I know better, okay? I like Latinas and Latinos. I lived in Miami. I brought lawsuits for the Cuban-American community, for the Venezuelan community. I really like the people and the culture, and so does Arpaio. I've never heard him say a negative word, but he believes in legal immigration. And in Phoenix, Arizona, in Maricopa County, which is his county, that's exactly what the problem is. It's being overrun by illegal aliens who not just commit crimes, but frankly are sucking off of the local economy. And he's there to do a job. Now, going way back when, he started a program where he would lock them up, throw them in jail. Sometimes they'd have to stay outside because there wasn't enough room in the jails. His policy was to make them feel like they did something wrong by having them wear pink underwear. I mean, that doesn't hurt anybody to wear pink underwear. I mean, sometimes even men wear pink underwear. But the reality is that he didn't really harm anybody. What he did was enforce U.S. immigration laws. Now, Obama came along. He went to the Supreme Court through his corrupt Attorney General, Eric Holder, at the time. And the Supreme Court said, well, states can't enforce, or localities, federal immigration laws. And some of his deputies apparently went out and continued to go to day worker sites, even after that ruling, to see whether there were illegal aliens there. Now, the sheriff didn't give that order. He didn't condone it, but it happened a couple times. And what happened is the ACLU came along and they filed a lawsuit. And who was their law firm? No surprise, Covington and Burling. Who is a senior partner at Covington and Burling? Eric Holder, former Attorney General. This, of course, is present. Also, the former head of the Obama Criminal Division, Lanny Brewer. And they got a judge by the name of G. Murray Snow, who wanted to make a name for himself. Tells you that judges sometimes are not always what they appear to be. He was appointed apparently by George W. Bush. He's not really a conservative, but he was trying to be big man on campus, and he found Sheriff Arpaio in civil contempt. And then he referred it to the Justice Department to prosecute Sheriff Arpaio criminally, saying that he intentionally violated his order not to do profiling at day worker sites, which the sheriff did not do. The case was assigned to, you guessed it, a Clinton appointee by the name of Susan Bolton, a buddy of G. Murray Snow. And by the way, in the context of the case with Snow, when that was going on, Snow's wife was heard saying in public that the judge was out to destroy Arpaio. And in fact, all of these things, Arpaio was charged criminally just 2 weeks before his latest election to be reelected to sheriff of Maricopa County. It was a political hit. It cost him the election. But then he wound up in front of Bolton for criminal prosecution. And the trial occurred in the last few weeks. And just a few days ago, this judge predictably came out with a finding that Sheriff Arpaio had committed criminal contempt. It carries a maximum sentence of 6 months. Sheriff Arpaio is 85 years old. He's someone who is in very good health, but the leftist media jumped on this, smeared him all over the world, and this is a good man. I can tell you there's not a racist bone in his body. He's a good man. And the sad part is, and this kind of fits in with everything else, and that's why I'm talking about it right up front in this segment, because we're going to talk more about this later in this show, is that this is the problem with our legal system. This is why I started Judicial Watch back in 1994. That's why I ran for the U.S. Senate in Florida in 2003, 2004. I was going to take the concept of Judicial Watch inside of the Senate like a Trojan horse to try to reform the system. And that's why I started Freedom Watch after my unsuccessful Senate run in 2004. And, God was looking after me. He knows that I'm better from the outside. I don't regret not winning. I feel like I'm doing what my calling in life is. But the fact is that these judges are so political, and I could predict that Bolton was going to find Arpaio in criminal contempt. Others thought, no, there's a lot of evidence in Arpaio's favor. I said, it really doesn't matter. She's Clinton-appointed judge. She's going to do what her benefactors want her to do. Arpaio was a very strong supporter of President Trump. He endorsed him. I don't think President Trump could have been elected without Arpaio. And that's my next segue, is that after these criminal charges were filed, Arpaio thought that perhaps President Trump and his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, would intercede, at least put a hold on the prosecution to evaluate it, to see whether it was valid or not. Same thing that I was asking Jeff Sessions to do as Attorney General for Clayman Bundy. None of this was done. Sheriff Arpaio was abandoned by Jeff Sessions at the Justice Department. And I understand the president has a lot of problems and he can't really focus on a lot right now. But President Trump didn't come to Sheriff Arpaio's help either. But he should have certainly had his Attorney General at least review the case until everything sorted its way out. And this Judge Bolton didn't allow for a jury trial. Sheriff Arpaio is up at the Supreme Court now saying he should have had a jury trial, but she tried it herself and made the decision herself as a judge-tried case because she wanted to make sure, just like Murray Snow before her buddy in that court in the District of Arizona, they wanted to put the nails into Sheriff Arpaio's coffins themselves to make sure that it happened. And this is our legal system today. It is severely broken. It's more than broken. We don't have one. And going back to the American Revolution, what is one of the primary reasons for that? Why did we revolt in 1776? Why did we sign a Declaration of Independence in my native city on or about July 4th of that year? It was because King George III took the criminal justice system away from the colonies, took it to the court of King James in London. The colonies no longer had any control over their own fate. It was this tyrannical leader, King George, frankly, who's a lot less worse than what we've had recently with President Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, to name a few. And frankly, and I hate to say this, but George W. Bush, he just wasn't there. He was working out in the White House gym most of the time, maybe having a few beers and watching football. In fact, he fell off his bed at one point, choking on Frito-Lays or whatever. We haven't really had leadership here until the Trump administration. And the sad part is that the Trump administration, through Attorney General Jeff Sessions, abandoned its supporters and friends thus far. And that's why I've been calling on Attorney General Jeff Sessions to either do your job or resign. And we're going to talk about this later with regard to leaks. Now, he seems to be showing that he might have some interest in all these leaks coming out of the White House and elsewhere, but he's done little to nothing else other than immigration. And ironically, the current policies of the Justice Department, which are to allow localities and counties and states like Maricopa County, which is where Sheriff Arpaio is from, and he was sheriff for many years, is to allow them to enforce federal immigration laws because they don't have enough resources for the federal government to do it on its own. It's a reversal of Obama. So what Sheriff Arpaio was convicted of was, even if he had the intent to do it, which he didn't, was nothing different than what the Justice Department now allows counties and states and localities to do. So he is facing 6 months in prison for something which is now the policy of the Trump administration, and Sessions did not intercede. This is an outrage. It is a complete abdication of responsibility, and it's why I think that the Attorney General should either shape up or ship out. I think that internally he's a good man, but he's putting the interests of the American people second to his own interests, not making waves, fearful that the Democrats will try to impeach him, as they're trying to do with President Trump, fearful that he'll be brought up on perjury charges for statements that he made in front of Congress about connections with the Russians. And I don't believe that he intentionally did anything wrong there, but he's being so reflexive that, frankly, except for a few limited areas, we really don't have an attorney general. And, of course, this has been the case for a long time. Either we haven't had one, either one's been absent, or they've been malevolent. They've been evil, in effect. And that's why I founded Judicial Watch in '94. It's why I founded Freedom Watch after my Senate campaign. Please go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org. Please contribute. We are your private justice department. Frankly, as of today, you have no other. And the difference between Freedom Watch today and Judicial Watch, which I founded, is that I'm a lawyer with 40 years of litigation experience. We have come forward. I'm doing what I used to do at Judicial Watch. Judicial Watch does mostly Freedom of Information Act requests. They don't have really experienced litigators there that know how to try cases. You need to support us at freedomwatchusa.org. We'll be right back.
Dangerous.
Don't care. Use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor.
Very bad.
Larry Clayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
We were just talking about the abdication of responsibility thus far of Attorney General Jeff Sessions. He's abandoned Arpaio. He's abandoned the Bundys, which President Trump supported their cause when they used the Second Amendment rights and First Amendment rights to peacefully protest. Instead, the Bureau of Land Management, run by former Senator from Nevada's goons, Harry Reid, assaulted his family, threw his sister to the ground violently, tased his two sons, kicked his dog, harmed the dog, killed their cattle, and terrorized them, threatened them with death if they didn't get off the land because Harry Reid and Obama wanted them off the land. And on Obama's way out the door, of course, he nationalized all of it and made it the Butte National Monument. So Clayman doesn't really, according to Obama, even have a right to be there anymore. But this tells you something about the justice system. Now, over the last few weeks, President Trump has been very critical of Attorney General Jeff Sessions. I may have done it differently. I would have probably called him into my office. I would have had witnesses present, so I couldn't have been accused of obstructing justice. And I would have said, Attorney General Sessions, here's what I want done. Okay, I want you to do it in a fair and neutral way. I want you to evaluate the Arpaio case and the Bundy case. I want you to start looking at this mass illegal surveillance, which has affected me and my family. and I want you to do your job. And I want you to tell me whether you're going to do your job and you do it fairly and neutrally, or I want your resignation right now. And that's the way it should have been done. It shouldn't have been done in public like that. But it was done in public, and I understand why President Trump was upset, and I understand why he was aggravated. I would have been too. And that's not even withstanding the fact that Sessions abandoned him with regard to the appointment of special counsel Robert Mueller. He didn't have to give the matter over to special counsel Robert Mueller. He could have had people inside the Justice Department that did not have a conflict of interest do the investigation. Now, we're going to talk about Mueller later in the show. But what I'm talking about here, the essence of it is that now Sessions, with that criticism of Trump, says he's looking into the leaks. And just in the last few days, there have been more leaks. There have been leaks, people in and around President Trump inside the White House, him saying that he thinks the White House is a dump, that he had conversations with the Prime Minister of the President of Mexico and the Prime Minister of Australia, and in fact, he made a reference with regard, according to these leaks, which may not be true, that he thought that the Prime Minister of Australia was kind of a moron. Well, he is a moron, I'll tell you. And the President of Mexico is just simply corrupt. And he was saying, frankly, I have a better time talking to Putin than I do with these guys. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you can have a civil conversation even with a reformed so-called communist like Putin, who's now a dictator, and think that maybe you're having better communication than with people who are not supposed to be. And, of course, we know that Mexico is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. In fact, I think it's ranked the most corrupt. So they're having these leaks. But the broader issue here is, as we brought to you in prior radio shows, is that Dennis Montgomery, our whistleblower, no one wants to listen to him because he'll tell you that there's been mass surveillance for decades under Bush, under Obama, and others. And the reason that no one listens to him is because we learned this week that there's mass surveillance. This broke with Sarah Carter and John Solomon of Circa News, who have done a very good job. They're both friends of ours. And that's not why I think they're doing a good job. They're doing a good job. And they revealed that the CIA, NSA, and FBI have been surveilling members of Congress. And this is why Congress doesn't want to listen to Montgomery. They're worried about if they get into the broader issue, not just these leaks. And frankly, they haven't thus far got into the leaks either, although they say they're going to, but you can't believe Congress. Who believes them anymore? If they get into the broader issue of these intelligence agencies violating our Fourth Amendment, creating this Orwellian state, creating this police state, then all the stuff about them is going to start flying out of so-called files at the intelligence agencies. Their personal lives could be ruined. Their political lives for sure would be ruined. And they're being just like Jeff Sessions. They're saying, I'm putting my interests first to the American people, and they're not doing their job. And that's why we are in a revolutionary mode right now. We do not have a legislative branch of government that represents us. We don't have the courts because they've been packed with Clinton and Obama judges, leftist judges, who are subverting the Constitution, who don't believe in the rule of law. And our executive branch, with all of these investigations like Robert Mueller and the pounding that the president takes from the leftist media like CNN and MSNBC, he's prevented from doing his job. He's being diverted. So that's why Freedom Watch is so important. We are your voice, and we're going to have more when I'm back. We'll be right back, and we're going to talk about other things that have been going on this week.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Clayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I want to talk more about these leaks and about this mass surveillance because, you see, the problem is this. I'm a lawyer. When I talk to my clients, I know that my conversations are being recorded and surveilled. I know when I send emails to them that they're being intercepted. I know that when I use social media, that's being violated. That's happening with all of you out there. The NSA, at a minimum, notwithstanding the FBI and the CIA that does the same thing, have stored all of our communications. It goes back 5 years. There's a supercomputer in Utah that keeps all this stuff, and they have other facilities too. And they also collaborate with MI5 and MI16 in Great Britain, the French, and others. Sometimes we collect data completely illegally through our so-called allies in Europe who can get this stuff even in a more outrageous and illegal way. And consequently, we live in the state of George Orwell, 1984, where nothing we say is private. And whenever the government wants to destroy you or try to destroy you by smearing you, they have access to this information. Now, I know in the last year, 3 times I've changed my cell phone. I'm going to have to do it again. My battery doesn't even charge anymore. They sent updates. Be careful, guys and gals, when you get these updates from Samsung or from Apple or whatever. According to Dennis Montgomery, that's the way you can insert malware into your phone, and it's a way that they backdoor everything that you're saying. Now, look, most people they'll leave alone. Okay, if you go through your life and you're flipping hamburgers at McDonald's or whatever, or In-N-Out Burger, or wherever, Taco Bell, they're not going to bother you probably. But if you're Larry Clayman and you're fighting the government, or if you're being critical and you're writing critical stories which they consider to be a threat, or if you're congressmen and senators that might actually do something, of course we know that they usually don't because they get frightened off, they're going to be getting into your underwear. And they know everything in your underwear. They know everything in everything about your life, and they can use it against you. And that's why recently I brought yet a new lawsuit in my name and in Dennis Montgomery's name, because they got into all of our cell phones, our computers, and everything else. I went to Verizon 3 times. I said, is this normal that the battery's being drawn down, that my pictures are rotating without my going in some kind of sequence thing on the software? Are all of these abnormalities the result of a software glitch? And they said, no. I've got 3 separate witnesses that I'm going to bring forward in this lawsuit that I filed. They said, no, this is not normal. Okay, does 2 and 2 equal 4? Do bears live in the woods? And, that's a Southern expression, but Southern lawyers know how to make the point. And I know how to make the point, too. Hey, I'm a converted Yankee. I went to Duke University and Emory Law School. I lived most of my life in the South. I live in Florida. I'm a Florida citizen. That's the South. There's a certain common sense about all of this. And this lawsuit's progressing. I have filed a motion for a preliminary injunction. It's going to be going to a hearing very soon, an evidentiary hearing. And I've told the court, I need discovery. I need to be able to take the deposition of James Comey. I need to be able to take the deposition of James Clapper, former director of national intelligence, who lied to Congress in saying there wasn't this mass surveillance, who now has apparently been behind more leaks, it was discovered this week, mass leaks and unmasking names. The guy is a total criminal, okay? And I'm not shy about saying that. Mano a mano in a court of law, Clapper, you're going to be held accountable. And then you've got John Brennan, who was director of the CIA, who also surveilled Senator Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat even, when she was running the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he's engaged in illegal leaks and unmasking. You have Samantha Powers, former ambassador of the UN, who has been involved and implicated in unmasking people in and around President Trump. And now this week you have Ben Rhodes, who was the National Security Advisor. Apparently he's implicated. This is out of control, but it's not just the leaks with regard to President Trump and the people around him. It's all of you. It's you and your loved ones. And there's nothing that you can do today that the government doesn't know. When you use your phone and you use Uber, Uber knows exactly where you are within a few feet. Now, if Uber knows that, just think what the government knows. They track you at all times, and they're able to discern what it is you're saying. So that's what's so important. This case is moving forward. The government's resisting this. I want to know why, and it's another question for Jeff Sessions. Why is it that your federal programs branch, which defends most of these cases, I've been fighting against them for years, they're certified liars. They come into court, they lie for the government. It doesn't matter whether it's Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, or now the Trump administration. They're paid liars. They're yes men. They have to do what they're told, or they think that maybe they'll be demoted to a Siberian field office of the Justice Department. And I want to know why this Justice Department is even defending Comey, why it's even defending Clapper, why it's even defending Brennan, why it's defending the NSA, CIA, NSA in this mass surveillance case. I got 2 preliminary injunctions against them several years ago, and the USA Freedom Act then was enacted by Congress to try to ensure that this mass surveillance wasn't occurring. But now we know that these agencies and these individuals and others have violated that too. And it's not just Obama people. We have CIA Director Mike Pompeo. He thinks this is a great idea. Worst cabinet official in the Trump administration. Someone who's not too bright, number one. You can just watch him on TV and figure that one out. And someone who has no respect for the Constitution. And Trump made a mistake. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's participating in even surveilling Trump. These people care about themselves more than they do about the President of the United States. So this is what we're up against. And why isn't Sessions coming to us and saying, hey, Larry, why don't we settle these cases? Why don't we enter into a consent decree that this won't happen? And my Justice Department, rather than defending criminals, will ensure that this mass surveillance does not happen when individuals, entities, and other organizations are not in the act of committing a crime, or there's no probable cause that they may be, or communicating with terrorists. Why isn't our Justice Department representing us? Why are they representing criminals at taxpayer expense? And this is why, again, I keep pounding this in. It's why I founded Judicial Watch in 1994. It's why I ran for the U.S. Senate and was going to create a law firm inside of the Senate. And it's why I founded Freedom Watch. And it's why I go to freedomwatchusa.org. freedomwatchusa.org. Please contribute to us. Now, let's use this as a segue, as I say, a way to move on to another subject, is because we have no legal system. And what we've got that functions. What we've got is a special counsel, Robert Mueller. Now, who is Robert Mueller? Dennis Montgomery will tell you all about Robert Mueller. And I'll tell you about Robert Mueller. Way back when, he was engaged in illegal mass surveillance as the head of the FBI. Robert Mueller tried to drum 2 of my clients, special agents, out of the FBI because they wanted to expose what did not happen in the days leading up to 9/11. They were investigating Saudi money laundering in the United States, which is thought to have given rise to financing 9/11. And they were prevented from doing their investigation. Why was that? Because I believe the Saudis, the royal family, is very close to the Bush family, and the Bush family didn't want to offend the Saudi royal family because the Saudi royal family pumps a lot of money into Bush the dad, his organization, which he's a part, the Carlyle Group. This is well known, left and right. The Carlyle Group took $1 billion in investment from Osama bin Laden's family. It's an investment group. And George H.W. Bush, the dad, was a charter member, a card-carrying member of the Carlyle Group. So they didn't want to offend that. And this gave rise to 9/11. And when our clients came forward to expose what had not been done, they were threatened with, as FBI agents, they were threatened with having their security clearance pulled, which means they're not employable even when they leave the FBI if they're drummed out. And they were threatened in a number of ways. And this was Mueller. He was FBI director. And then, of course, we know under Montgomery that Mueller himself was involved in illegal surveillance. Now, Mueller happens to be the special counsel because Jeff Sessions panicked, the AG, and his, frankly, compromised Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein was also compromised. I wrote a column this week on Newsmax. You can find it at Clayman's Court. You can find it at freedomwatchusa.org. Why was Rosenstein allowed to pick Mueller? Rosenstein's not even a Republican. He's nothing. He formerly was U.S. Attorney for the District of Maryland under Obama. Now, who in their insane mind would put that in as number 2 at the Justice Department? And we find out this week that there was a likelihood that the recommendation for this came from God knows where. But it was bizarre. It came apparently from Reince Priebus, okay, whose name rhymes with Prius, okay? The only difference is that you asked for it, you got it, Reince Priebus. That's what we got. We got it right up the rear end with Reince Priebus. He's an establishment person. Thank God Trump got rid of him this week. He was absolutely worthless. He was trying to have Trump defeated in the early stages of the political campaign. He turned coat and went with the winner, and then Trump puts him in the White House. And this is the guy that had Rosenstein, according to some sources, Rod Rosenstein appointed as Deputy Attorney General, who then appoints Mueller. So Mueller's off on his jihad right now. He now has his 16th lawyer. 99% of them are pro-Clinton people. They're out to destroy Trump. They're all over the lot. And they may never get Trump. They probably won't get Trump because we have a tradition in this country that the president is above the law. Okay, presidents can do no wrong. They are presidents. But everybody below him that's within the line of fire, and I'm making a prediction. I predict that Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, General Flynn, Jared Kushner, and maybe even the Donald son are in grave jeopardy right now. Because, you see, Mueller, with 16 lawyers, you don't need 16 lawyers at the outset of an investigation. You just need the FBI. If you decide you're going to bring indictments after you do a legitimate investigation, then you hire all these lawyers. But it's clear that Mueller now has decided he's going to bring prosecutions. Now, he's going to be spending probably somewhere between $40 and $50 million minimum. That's been the history with independent counsels, special counsels, or whatever you want to call them. He's got to justify that expense. You and I are paying for that as taxpayers. So these are the people that are likely to get burned: Stone, Manafort, Flynn, Kushner, and Donald Jr., and some others. And this is going to be another example of why our legal system is out of control and doesn't work. I don't believe that any of these people have done anything likely wrong. I'm not going to indict anybody on a radio show. There are some people that are more slippery than others, believe me. I've had some experience with them, and I don't deal with them. But this is a reality that this special counsel investigation is out of control. They will never get Trump. He will never be indicted because we have a tradition that the president is not held accountable, and I don't feel that President Trump's done anything wrong in any event. So I want you to pay close attention to this, because in our last segment that's coming up, I'm going to talk about how other countries actually have a more equal justice system to the United States. We live in a dream world. Our founding fathers were enlightened by God, but they were not God. And they made some mistakes in the Constitution that have come out over time. In fact, it was Thomas Jefferson who realized that we were going to have to, tinker with the Constitution going forward. He knew that things would not work out exactly the way he thought. It was John Adams, his colleague, other founding father, that said, we are a country of laws, not men. But we have men. And when we have men that use the Constitution to violate it, we may need to tighten it up. And Jefferson also said, we're going to need a revolution probably every other generation just to clean house. And he wasn't talking about a peaceful one either. I don't advocate a violent revolution. But Jefferson, perhaps the greatest American president, the one closest to the way true Republicans think and true conservatives think, limited government, individual liberties. He was one of the first to talk out against slavery. In fact, his de facto wife was a slave, Sally Jennings. The reality is that this country is spinning out of control, and we don't have a legal system. And other countries, frankly, and theirs isn't great either, they have a better one than we do, and we better tighten it up right now. We'll be right back, because this is a serious issue that we need to take a look at. That's why I write as much as I do, because I want to educate the American people. That's why I have this radio show, because we really do need to change things. I'll be right back.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Clayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Let's now talk about legal systems in other countries. Let's talk about Israel, for instance. Israel has the so-called Justice Department, their Ministry of Justice, which is independent from the executive branch of government, from the legislative branch of government and from the judicial branch of government. It's a fourth branch of government. Now, I'm not saying that's perfect, but it's independent. Israel doesn't need special counsels like Robert Mueller. But Israel, contrary to the United States, has actually indicted and removed prime ministers and presidents. Ehud Olmert, the former prime minister, he's indicted. He's in prison right now. He was convicted of bribery. Currently, you have Prime Minister Netanyahu who's being accused of taking bribes, getting gifts for his sons, his wife, and others. And he's about ready to be indicted. Now, I'm not saying that's good, and I'm not saying that Netanyahu did anything wrong, although I will tell you, as much as I love Israel, and I'm a Zionist, I would die not just for the United States, but I would die in the protection of Israel. I'm a Jewish Christian, but I feel deeply about my Jewish roots. And when I've gone to Israel, I feel a tremendous warmth. And part of it, Jesus was Jewish. Jesus was a rabbi. He was at a Passover dinner the day before he was crucified. The two religions, and I know this is somewhat controversial, are joined at the hip. We're not different. Judaism is a broader concept of the way God operates, and Christianity is much more precise. Jesus came here, I believe, to teach the people, the Son of God, what God wanted to say, because he was in a human form, and he refined the Jewish religion. I'm not saying that Christianity is better than Judaism, but it became clearer. But I feel a kinship with Israel. And I'm telling you, it's not perfect, okay? The system there is fast and loose. A number of prime ministers have been found to have committed bribes. Former Prime Minister Rabin, during the years when I was a young lawyer, was ambassador to Washington. He had a secret slush fund in Washington. I himself have dealt with the Israeli embassy when I was an international trade lawyer, and they were funneling cases off to law firms because those law firms were bribing them, okay? The Israelis are not perfect, okay, nor is anybody. But you know what? When the justice system catches even their president or prime minister, they hold them accountable. And we don't do that in this country. Instead, we just kind of screw around with Mueller and, mess up an administration. I used to have a line with Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was, next to Barack Obama, the most corrupt president in my adulthood. Lyndon Johnson was incredibly corrupt, but I was a kid then. But Clinton would have been indicted in Israel. Obama would have been indicted in Israel. And now we have Brazil. They've indicted a couple presidents, and they've thrown at least one of them so far in jail. So what is it about this country that allows our chief executives to go off scot-free? And, of course, we've seen that with the Clintons over many years, is that Bill and Hillary Clinton are above the law. No one touches them. They're fearful. 80 people died in and around their administration, material witnesses and others. I think they're scared to go after them because these people know no bounds. I believe that they have had people hit. I'll be blunt about that. And I know myself. I had a bodyguard at Judicial Watch that used to follow me around, a former Navy SEAL. Sometimes I was more frightened of him than I was of the Clintons, frankly. But the reality is that this is the world we live in, and we don't have a legal system, and that's why I advocate that if we ever make a change to the Constitution, we perhaps should consider separating the Justice Department from the other three branches of government. If that happened, you wouldn't need a Freedom Watch. You would have a government that might be able to function, but it's not functioning now. So I want you to go to freedomwatchusa.org. We are your private Justice Department. I want you to make a really good contribution to us. We need to ramp up. We're your only line of defense. We're the only public interest group out there that really knows how to litigate cases in a major way. I'm a trial lawyer of 40 years, and I know how to try cases. I've never lost a jury trial, by the way. That doesn't mean I'm not going to lose one in the future. But I know how to communicate, and I need your help. So please go to freedomwatchusa.org. Contribute to us. You can do it off of PayPal, because we do not have a Justice Department as of today. It's being ill-served, serving the American people. It's ill-serving President Trump. It's certainly ill-served Sheriff Arpaio, Clayman Bundy, and the people in around him. I want to thank you for listening to me. I hope that you can take everything that I say in. You can send me an email at leclayman@yahoo.com. I'm busy, but I'll try to respond. God bless you. God bless the United States. And God bless us all for the future.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, you know, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer. Always a great answer. Always a great answer. Always a great answer. Always a great answer.